All right, welcome back to Signal. Today we're looking at what happens after you make it, because for a lot of people right now, success doesn't feel like it used to. In the headlines this week, Starbucks is restructuring, cutting hundreds of corporate roles. Telefónica is reducing its workforce by 7,000 as automation expands, and across tech, layoffs keep coming, more than 150,000 jobs gone this year alone. It's a moment where career stability feels uncertain and leadership looks more human than heroic. Stephen, before we get into all of that, how's your work-life balance been? I know we haven't talked for a few weeks.
It's crazy as ever. I mean, we're gearing up to some pretty big events in the fall, releases and such, but I'm also finalizing my MBA over at Boston University. So that's been on a lot of my agenda, which is to finish up my degree after 2 years being in that program, which has been an amazing experience. But I'm very close. It's like victory is in my, it's definitely in my reach, so
Yeah.
it's about 7 more weeks left. So it's exciting.
Awesome. All right, let's get into it. Starbucks has announced a broad restructuring plan that includes the elimination of about 900 corporate positions and the closure of roughly 100 underperforming stores across the United States. In a memo to employees, CEO, and I hope I say his name right, Lexman Narasimhan, whatever, that the move is part of an effort to make the company simpler, more focused, and faster to execute. The cuts will primarily affect corporate and regional support roles, while most store-level employees are expected to remain in place. Starbucks says it will attempt to reassign affected workers wherever possible and will offer severance packages to those who are not retained. The company is also reorganizing several departments, merging overlapping functions in finance, marketing, and technology. The goal, according to Narasimhan, there goes that name again, is to create a more connected company capable of supporting store growth and meeting rising operational costs. The announcement follows months of slowing sales growth and a series of high-profile unionization efforts at stores across the U.S. Starbucks has faced increasingly scrutiny from labor groups and regulators over its handling of employee organizing, though the company says the restructuring is unrelated to those disputes. Analysts say the changes reflect broader challenges across the retail and service sectors, where inflation and shifting consumer habits are putting pressure on margins and corporate overhead. Stephen, Starbucks is one of those companies often seen as a bellwether for the broader job market. And do you see this restructuring as let's say a necessary reset, or as another signal that corporate confidence is starting to crack while our consumer markets are changing?
Look, business is an organism, like the human organism, and it gets sick. And the symptoms of sickness in this business is the lack of growth. So you see a decline, you see issues with the balance sheet, all good and responsible businesses. The exec team, the board, it's their fiduciary responsibility to make sure that this ship sails in the right direction. So when the business leadership there is seeing issues with growth, they need to look to find the problems. Where they find the problems, right-sizing those and making sure that the business can work to develop and deliver the kind of outcomes that are required for that company, it's absolutely essential. Sometimes we forget. As you're reading that, I'm like, there's a mix of like social justice stuff that's going on, and let's not conflate this stuff. This is business.
Starbucks out of all places.
Yeah, this is business. It's like, I'm sorry, this is not the government. This is not society. This is a business that has a profit target. And if it's not operating in a right way, then a responsible leadership team and responsible management team has to go look at it and go, look, where are the problems? Let's figure it out. Now, the other dimension of this, I think, is that I heard finance, accounting, technology, those departments are being impacted. I think that AI is also playing into a bit of this, in the sense that we are seeing optimization of traditional roles and the use of technology and automation. I know you'll get into that in a moment with the other news articles, but I think that this is also affecting. And that if we're not using the tools we have at our disposal to improve the business, and ultimately it's the outcome. The outcome is improving how our customers experience Starbucks, or how they experience the business, right? And they go in there to buy the best coffee they possibly can find on the street. And there are other options. And so if it's, if you're not operating to your full capacity and your full capability, then you know what? Shame on you. So figure it out. Use technology to improve the quality of experience for your customer, improve that customer journey, and you'll have a healthy, loyal fan base of customers that keep coming back. We see it at Pete's. We see it at Tim Hortons up in Canada. People love these brands and they keep coming back because they run in a more efficient way.
Yeah, absolutely. The Spanish telecom company Telefónica has announced plans to reduce its workforce by roughly 7,000 positions over the next 3 years as a part of restructuring effort to tie to automation and digital transformation. The company currently employs about 55,000 people in Spain and more than 100,000 worldwide. The cuts are expected to affect primarily domestic operations, with their goal of lowering operation costs and adapting the organization to what the company calls a leaner, more efficient model. Telefónica said the decision follows an internal review of overlapping functions in its network, support, and administrative divisions. The restructuring plan will be implemented through voluntary departure programs negotiated with labor unions. There we have the unions again. In Spain's Ministry of Labor, employees aged 55 and older will be offered early retirement incentives, while younger staff may be eligible for redeployment or retraining programs. Company officials emphasize that the shift toward AI-driven operations and automated service systems will allow Telefónica to maintain quality standards while lowering costs. Critics, including several Spanish labor unions, warn that the cuts could further reduce job stability in the tech and telecom sectors, which have already seen significant downsizing in recent years. Telefónica said it expects the restructuring to generate about 1 billion euros in annual savings by 2026, helping fund investments in 5G fiber networks and AI-based customer service tools. So another slacker you got to talk to when your phone doesn't work. Do you know the term slacker, Stephen?
I do.
So we talked about it before. My question is, and I think I have an idea of what your answer is going to be. As a company, is there a line to draw between, more from an ethics standpoint, is there a line to draw between layoffs and the protection of the employee and sort of getting your company on the right tracks when it comes to modernization and AI?
Okay, so I have decades in this market, and I know these. I know this company. I know their competitors in the market. Look, I'm going to say this, and I don't want to offend anybody, but telecom as an industry is a bloated tick. It's a non-competitive, lack of differentiation. Mine's as good as yours, kind of. I mean, it's at the end of the day, and we always hope, because telecom itself is a huge innovation, right? The fact that we have cell phones and we can walk around and we can get access to, voice and data all over the world. I mean, that's an absolute marvel, and we should thank, me and others for those innovations, right, from years ago. But reality is that when we think about telecom, it's a very large workforce that does support that kind of business. It's people who are answering phones. It's people who are in the data centers. It's people who are out on the trucks and maintaining the wires and all the lines. There's, basically the cost, and I can tell you a lot about this because I've lived this, the cost that they're trying to remove, and they're using automation principally to do that, are to have jobs that are typically done by lots and lots of people that are very costly to them in the aggregate. So call centers are expensive. In the first round of this, they probably looked, and I think they probably looked at outsourcing to other lower cost geographies where they could get cheaper labor rates. But at some point, they're using technology to actually augment or replace those lower valued jobs that, they can have a third of the people doing that, versus what they do today, because they can use technology to do more screening. You can use more IVR on the phone systems. You can use more chatbots on the website. You can have a better integration on your phone itself with support. Verizon does this as well. So I think this is where you see telecom going, which is reduction of force, because you're using technology to fill that gap. You still need people behind the scenes. You need escalation policies. You need those smart people who can go out to the pole, go up to the top of the pole and fix the wire issue, fix the system issue.
Yeah.
You're not going to see a full-scale reduction of force there, but you are going to see select parts of their business. So I think when you hear the numbers, They're startling, but reality is if you start to segment that across their business, you go, okay, there's a little here, there's a little here, there's a little there. Now, it's just like the Starbucks problem, and you teed off on that. The end result is the customer getting a better value for what they purchased from this company. And I would argue if Telefónica needs to right-size the organization in order to get back to profit, reduce the bloat, and deliver a better quality of service to their customer, God bless them. Do it. Do it, because it's the smartest thing to do for a business.
Absolutely. I mean, we're talking, if they have over 100,000 people working for them worldwide, and they're slashing, I mean, we're talking about 7,000 in the next 3 years. We're not talking 7,000 by next month.
That's
so
right.
Let's say
or every
3,
month, right? It's
yeah.
It's
so
yeah,
let's say we're talking about 3,000 in first level customer support that just get the first support case from a client in, hey, my phone's not working, sort of passes it on to the next second level customer support person, and then another customer success or research,
2 or 3 layers of this,
rate your experience, whatever it is. The first impulse is when you read about this, depending on which form of news writes about this, then you're thinking like, oh my gosh, another layoff, like, can we get a break now? But I'm with you. It makes sense. And then if it's a better deal for the customer, then amazing.
There's a great example of a company that built this in their business model when they started. It's called Free Telecom. They basically built automation they built automation and probably now AI into everything they do. So they can run basically on a shoestring budget and deliver a better quality of service than their competitors in the market like Orange or Telefónica. So I would say innovation and ingenuity is driving better outcomes. Telefónica should follow that lead.
Absolutely. Moving on, we received a very, very nice letter from a listener with a question that I would love to talk to you about. So here it is. Dear Joel and Stephen, I just discovered the signal recently and have been listening to most of the episodes. I finally decided to write in. I'd like to stay anonymous if you don't mind. I'm in my early 30s and work as a project manager at one of the alphabet companies. A few months ago, I was promoted into a mid-management role, something I've been working towards for years. I thought I'd feel excited, accomplished, maybe even proud. Instead, I'm questioning everything. The imposter syndrome is real. I find myself in meetings wondering when somebody is going to realize I don't actually know what I'm doing. Sunday scaries have become Sunday terrors. I lie awake thinking about all the decisions I'm responsible for, all the things that could go wrong, all the people counting on me. And here's the part that really gets me. I'm now managing people who are older than me, people with more years of experiences in the industry. I can see it in some of their faces, the subtle skepticism, the hesitation before they take my direction, or maybe I'm just projecting my own insecurities onto them. Either way, it makes me feel like a kid playing dress up in her mom's clothes. I spent years wanting this. I worked late nights, took on extra projects, built relationships, did everything right. But now that I'm here, I'm not sure this is what I want anymore. Is it normal to feel this way? Does it get better? Or have I just discovered that leadership isn't actually for me? Love to hear your thoughts, or honestly, just to know if I'm not the only one who feels this way. Thank you for everything you do. Anonymous in the Valley. So the first 2 things that came to mind when I read this was, number 1, I'm very, very certain you're not the only one that feels like this. And number 2, having Sunday scaries, doubting things. The number 1 thing it means is that you care, which is a good sign. If somebody gets a new role, new responsibilities, and is like, well, whatever, it would show me they don't care about it. They don't have any sort of compassion or passion for it. What's your first impulse to this letter, Stephen?
I think this letter is great. It's indicative of how many people feel, and they're probably afraid to say it, right? But there's a sort of point in your development in your career where you don't know anything. And we talked about this on other episodes, but like, you don't know enough. You'll never know enough. You have to accept that you'll never know enough. Like, I made a very conscious decision, 2010 timeframe, that I was going to become a leader of an organization, that I was going to strive to be a leader, and that I couldn't. And I made a conscious, I had radical acceptance that I would never know as much as the people who worked for me or with me, some of the other people that were peers. And that I had for decade, I had pushed myself, actually for decade and a half, for like 15 years. I had pushed myself to read every manual, to take every course, to be involved in every, my boss would say, anybody want to do? Yeah, my hand was already up. And I was already involved. I was very eager to be the very best at my craft. I learned a lot about technology in the middle of 1990s and got immersed in it. And then in that
Mm-hmm.
first decade of the 2000s, I was like just looking for every opportunity to learn more and more and more and more. But I made a
Mm-hmm.
conscious and I radically accepted that I would never be able to do it all forever. There would be
Mm-hmm.
some point where I'd have to step back and say, now it's time to think more strategically. I don't need to be as conversant and smart on out there. There will be things that I will own and I will feel very close to, but there will be many items which I could never get close to, and I have to accept that. Now, that's a different bit of scenario, but it's the answer to this person's problem, which is you feel like you're not good enough. You'll never be good enough.
Mm-hmm.
The trends and the moves that happen inside business are so swift that you're never going to be able to catch all the balls. It's a juggling act, right?
Yeah.
If you haven't
Yeah.
read. So you have
Mm-hmm.
to accept that you're never going to be able to learn it all, know it all, and be all. And so I think that's part of the solution. And then the Sunday scaries thing for Monday morning. Look, I check my calendar the night before to make sure that I have all my shit together the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody should do that. And some days you're like, I got to do that shit that's due.
Mm-hmm.
I've failed on this one. I let somebody down. They wanted it, on Friday, and look, it's Monday tomorrow, and I owe them this. And I'm like a procrastinator sometimes. Like I look at things, I'll work on it on Monday. I'll work on it on Tuesday. I'll work on it. So everybody's got their own thing. But I'd say, like, the other bit of advice for this person is maybe they're not cut out to be the boss, and it's okay. That's another bit of radical acceptance. Like, you don't have to be the leader. You can be really good as a practitioner. Find your
Yep.
center of gravity, find where your sweet
Yep.
spot is, and play to that sweet spot. I look back at music and I think of some of the most amazing bands. I think of like the Beatles. Ringo was not the best drummer in the world, but man, he could lock in that groove and he could play on those songs. He had a sound to it, right? But he
Mm-hmm.
wasn't, Buddy Rich. If you're comparing yourself against somebody like a Buddy Rich and you're Ringo Starr or Charlie Watson, a Buddy Rich, Neil Peart and Buddy Rich is a different scenario because you got two
Yeah.
maestros, two
Yeah.
absolute virtuosos. But, you look at some of these other guys, they just sound and play really, really good. And they figured out that's their thing. So they're never going to be, the same as these incredible virtuosos in their craft, but they're going to be defined by a sound and a feel that when you hear them play, when you hear Charlie Watts playing on a record with the Rolling Stones, it's Charlie Watts. He doesn't have to go, hog wild like, John Bonham. He's got his own sound and he's appreciated for that. So you at work don't need to be Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or, Mark Zuckerberg. You
Mm-hmm.
need to be who you are best and most comfortable with. You have to be yourself. And if you don't want to be the boss,
Absolutely.
it's okay.
And I mean, going on off of what you said about finding your gig and what you're actually good at, some people are made to be leaders, some are made to be specialists in whatever they do. With every job, there comes a certain job description, of course, or at least it should. You have a problem if you don't, but there's expectations to any role across all the companies. The job description might vary depending on what you do, but the job description of a, let's say, project manager is not to know every nix and cranny about the software, about the code
Right.
you're doing. That's the job of the software developer. A project manager needs to know deadlines, requirements, budget, how he leads his team and who does what. So there's this saying that if you start a business and you start to hire people, you should be the dumbest person in the room because everybody brings in their set of expertise
That's
into
right.
the room. And your job as a leader is to bring that and harness that into one cohesive thing you do to reach the goal you've been set. So having the feeling of this person knows more than me, or I feel like I'm less capable or whatever. Look at this, the job requirement you have, and then go by, do I fill out that job requirement? And eventually that's going to be measured by the success you have. One thing I want to say though, if you feel like people are looking at you like you're the worst thing ever listening to someone, it feels like that to everyone, and you learn to deal with it. I
Yeah.
had to present in front of my college class last semester, and I sit like in the middle of the room. I'm not first row, but I'm also not the last seat of the room in class. And like, I just sit there. It's an hour and a half class. You're going to have different set of emotions in your face. And then I stood there and was presenting and had some little things in the presentation where I thought I was going to get a giggle or a reaction. Nothing. Dead silence. And I looked in every single one's face, and every second face, I thought they're telling me you're an absolute idiot and asshole. And then at the end of the day, I was sitting there. I put up my phone screen and I recorded, and I went through it with the time lapse, and I thought, Jesus, that's how I'm looking at people all the time. So what my mentor always tells me, it's never as bad and never as good as you think it is. So people in meetings at 8 a.m. on a Friday, they're not going to sit all there like a happy puppy, just excited for what you're going to have to say. So I know it's hard. You're going to get used to it. Tone it down. It's never as bad as you think it is.
It's funny as you were saying that last bit. I remember when I was at Berkeley, and I think we talked about this once a long time ago, but when I was at Berkeley, when I was younger, and for my first degree, and I remember being in a class, and the teacher, we all were sitting in a circle with our guitars, and he would point at you and you would have to pick up where the other person left off. But the one thing that I learned in that experience is never stop. So if you're playing and you screw up, you don't stop. You don't stop. You don't stop and go, screwed up. So that it's like that at work, right? You just kind of tapped into that, which is you keep going, and by the way, if you screw up and you think you screw up, nobody else caught that you screwed up. It's it's very subtle. You think you have, like, I don't know, the highest strength microscope on yourself. But reality is, it's like the lowest strength for everybody else. They don't see that you screwed up. They don't see that you flubbed. And, if you count all the ums and ahs in your speech, it's you doing it. It's not them. They're like, oh, yeah. So they're filler words or whatever. You got to keep going. You got to be confident. You got to also understand that hypercriticalness on you is never the same as how others see you or perceive you. And the other thing that you said, which was interesting, and I'd like to comment on it, which is it's the collective. When you're a leader, it's about getting the very best out of the collective, the people that you're coaching and that you're leading. And I think about your life on the field as a football player, and I think about, go back to the coach. 30 years ago, that coach was a player. That coach was an amazing player probably, and could run up and down that field, get to that goal line, spike the ball, and when they were in their prime, right? But when they get into their career as a coach, they're like, it's back to my point earlier. I don't do this anymore. I'm not going to run up and down the field. You guys run up and down the field. I'm going to tell you about form. I'm going to give you discipline, and I'm going to give you lessons for you. And we're going to come up with plays, because I've seen these plays 1,000 times and I know what works. Yeah. And that's my job. Your job is to run up and down on the field and to be the very best athletes at your age, at your level, where you are at this point in time. And it's very different. It's very different. The boss can't run up and down the field. They don't do it.
There's a saying in Germany. It says, "Never trust a skinny cook." And the same saying that I established is, "Never trust a skinny O-line coach," because somebody that's 5'11" and 180 pounds I don't care. The last time they possibly played offensive line was in 8th grade junior varsity.
Right.
But what you said about, the coach then becoming a player, and the point that person made about tenure and people sitting there being led by you that have been around the block for 20 more years, it makes sense. It totally makes sense that someone who's run the race, who's did whatever, has the experience to show for, will have a more natural level of respect to begin with, but can lose that just as quick, probably even quicker, if they mess up than somebody that's new and might not be in the business, in the industry for as long as they have. So if you're in your mid-30s and you have experts that have been in the industry for 20 years sitting in front of you, and you've been in there for 5, that doesn't mean that you can become any less of a leader than that person could be. You just have a different starting point, and you just got to be aware of that. So just as much as that, there's going to be less upfront trust for you. So you're going to have to earn it just as much, but you just start from a different point. So as words of encouragement, I would say just try it out, figure out if that's a thing you want to do, or if you want to go back to being an expert or a developer, whatever you're doing. Don't give up too soon though. Give it 6 months to a year, learn the ups and downs, and have a full a cycle of the business year to go through. And as I said before, it's never as good or as bad as it seems.
Completely
Stephen,
agree.
what are your thoughts? Anything to add?
I completely agree with that sentiment. And I think also another point that you made about the age of the players in the actual
Mhm.
team. You know, I've managed very early career people, but I've also had people that are later career. They all have
Mhm.
their strengths and weaknesses. And some of those later career people, they have a mindset of, yeah, I was out there slaying dragons and now I'm an individual contributor. Maybe they were a manager at some point and they're in an individual contributor role and they're okay with it because they did go out and do that and they slayed dragons. And yes, they do have experience and you need to respect them. But I've been in those situations where I've been younger and I've had people on the team that were older. There is a tension sometime to that because, you know, they may perceive you as being sort of a upstart and kind of, you know, younger and you don't know everything and I do know things. And there's sometimes there's a tension there, but I think you got to find that balance with those kind of people and be like, you know, I respect you. I respect what you contribute, you know, and I can learn from you as much as I can lead you. Because back to the point, we all have individual strengths and weaknesses. And there's a reason
Mhm.
why that person is in the leadership position. Again, if they don't feel comfortable with it, they should consider, you know, maybe moving into an IC type role. But the idea is they are in that position. Somebody else believes in them and sees them as being capable. So let's give that a try. Those people who are in the team who may be perceived as having more experience than the leader, those people, they're probably mature and they understand they're at the end of their career, later in their career, and they're okay with it likely. And if they're not okay with it, they'll leave. Okay. So, you know, I mean, honestly, I've seen it all in the 30 years I've been in business.
Absolutely. All right, Stephen, have a great rest of your week. Go kill it. To the person writing in and to everyone listening, you're all going to be
Yeah.
just fine. Just keep swinging, show up, and learn from your mistakes. Don't make the same mistake twice, ideally. We love you. We hope you have a great week. If there's any feedback, questions you have, feel free to write in via our email or Instagram or any form of conversation you want to have with us. We'll talk to you next week. Stephen, as always, the last word is yours.
I think it's great. I love feedback. It's a gift and it helps us shape and mold, but also hearing from people who are listening, I hope it is adding value. We enjoy doing this, so keep it up. Keep your feedback as well as your ideas coming, and we'll continue to cover those as we move along. So thank you, Joel.
Bye-bye.